My name is Amelia Davenport, but friends call me Mia. At 28, I never imagined I'd be the epicenter of a scandal that would shatter my family's pristine public image. We're Davenports of Chicago, a name synonymous with old money, thanks to my grandfather's sprawling industrial empire. In this gilded world, I was always the anomaly. My older sister, Olivia, was the meticulously polished heir, while I was the creative, unpredictable disappointment. When Grandfather Arthur passed away, I braced myself for an uncomfortable reading, but I could never have prepared for the seismic shift that would follow. Growing up in Lincoln Park, in a sprawling graystone mansion with manicured gardens that rolled toward a breathtaking view of Lake Michigan, was an exercise in curated perfection. From the outside, the Davenport family was flawless. My father, Richard Davenport, was a titan of finance, a man who moved markets with a single phone call. My mother, Eleanor, was a senior partner at a prestigious law firm, specializing in high-stakes corporate litigation. They were Chicago's ultimate power couple, their lives a seamless ballet of boardroom meetings and society galas. But the true foundation of our fortune was Grandfather Arthur. He was a legend, a self-made man who had forged Davenport Industries from a small machine shop in the 1960s. He expanded into manufacturing, then logistics, and eventually diversified into technology and green energy. By the time I was born, Davenport Industries was a global behemoth employing over 5,000 people. From my earliest memories, I felt like a foreign exchange student in my own family. While they dissected earnings reports and hostile takeovers over dinner, I was lost in daydreams, sketching fantastical creatures on my linen napkin. Olivia, 5 years my senior, was the daughter my parents had designed. She possessed our father's razor-sharp mind for numbers and our mother's ruthless analytical prowess. By 13, she was building her own stock portfolio. I, meanwhile, could hold forth on the nuances of chiaroscuro in Baroque painting or the emotional resonance of different sculptural materials, topics that invariably earned me worried, sidelong glances from my parents. Olivia followed the path they paved for her with unwavering precision. She attended the Latin School of Chicago, then Northwestern for her undergraduate degree, followed by the Kellogg School of Management for her MBA. She joined Davenport Industries at 24 and ascended the ranks with meteoric speed, becoming the director of global strategy before her 30th birthday. She married Charles Sterling, the son of one of our father's closest business allies, in a wedding so lavish it was featured in Chicago Social. Her life was a series of perfectly executed strategic moves. I, on the other hand, was a chaotic variable in their immaculate equation. I excelled academically, but my passions lay far outside their sphere of understanding. When I announced my intention to study sculpture at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, SAIC, my father chuckled, assuming it was a joke. The moment he grasped my seriousness, his face hardened into a mask of profound disappointment. "Art doesn't pay the bills, Amelia," he stated, his voice cold. "You need a practical career. The world has no patience for dreamers." Despite their staunch disapproval, I accepted my place at SAIC, my tuition partially covered by an academic scholarship I fought tooth and nail for. My parents refused to pay the remainder, framing it as a lesson in fiscal responsibility, even as they had bankrolled Olivia's far more expensive Kellogg education without a second thought. The only person who celebrated my decision was Grandfather Arthur. Without my parents' knowledge, he quietly subsidized my rent for a small studio apartment near campus and sent me stipends for bronze and clay. "Follow that fire in your gut, Mia," he'd tell me during our weekly phone calls. A life without passion is the worst kind of bankruptcy. After graduation, while Olivia was conquering the corporate world, I moved to Philadelphia, determined to make it on my own. I landed a job as an assistant at a small contemporary art gallery in Center City, earning just enough to afford a tiny apartment in Fishtown and make payments on my student loans. My parents viewed this as yet another confirmation of my poor judgment. Every holiday gathering became a tribunal where my life choices were cross-examined. Olivia just spearheaded the acquisition of that new tech firm, my mother would announce at Christmas dinner, beaming with pride. A $15 million deal for the company. She would then pivot to me, her smile tight and strained. And how is your little art job, Amelia? They couldn't grasp that success, for me, wasn't a number on a balance sheet. I found profound joy in discovering new artists and curating shows that sparked conversation and emotion. But in the Davenport dynasty, if your net worth wasn't growing, you were failing. The chasm between us widened when I quit the gallery to focus on my own sculpture. I had been creating intricate bronze and mixed media pieces in my spare time, and a few local cafes had agreed to display them. When a small bronze sold for $500, I felt a surge of pride more potent than any stock dividend. It was the first money I had ever earned solely from my own creative vision. My father was predictably unimpressed. $500? Olivia's hourly bonus is more than that. When will you grow up and face reality, Amelia? The deepest cut was that they never once made the trip to Philadelphia to see my work. Not a single time. Olivia visited once, during a business trip. She circled my sculptures with a look of polite confusion, trying to find the right words. "They're very interesting," she offered, before deftly changing the subject to her latest promotion. Grandfather Arthur was the exception. Despite being in his late 80s, he flew from Chicago to Philadelphia twice to attend my small gallery shows. He would spend long minutes with each piece, his gaze intense, truly absorbing what I was trying to communicate. He purchased my favorite sculpture, a complex, abstract form representing the tangled mess of family expectations, and installed it in his private study, a place my parents couldn't avoid. "You have a rare gift, Mia," he told me. "Don't ever let them convince you otherwise." As I approached my late 20s, my financial reality grew precarious. The art world is a fortress, and I was still outside its walls. I took on a collection of side jobs, freelance graphic design, bartending, even walking dogs, to support my art. My parents maintained their tough love stance, refusing to help even when a severe bout of pneumonia put me in the hospital for 3 days, leaving me with a mountain of medical debt. "You chose this path, Amelia," my mother said coolly over the phone. "You must learn to handle its consequences." Meanwhile, they continued to finance Olivia's opulent lifestyle. They gifted her and Charles a sprawling summer home in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, for their 5th anniversary and ensured every possible advantage was laid at her feet at Davenport Industries. The blatant disparity in their treatment was a constant, throbbing ache. Whenever I dared to mention it, my father would shut me down with his standard refrain, "When you begin to make responsible choices, we will treat you like a responsible adult." By my 28th birthday, I had all but abandoned hope of ever earning their approval. I poured my energy into my bond with Grandfather Arthur, my staunchest ally and the only family member who valued me for my spirit, not my stock options. Grandfather Arthur's health began to fail about a year before he died. At 89, he had always been a force of nature, his mind as sharp as a diamond, but a series of minor strokes began to erode his formidable strength. As his condition worsened, I found myself on the train from Philadelphia to Chicago almost every other weekend. My budget was stretched to its limit, but the thought of losing that precious time with him was unbearable. His Lincoln Park mansion, a few blocks from my parents' sterile home, had always felt like my true sanctuary. It was a place of warmth and intellect, filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, eclectic art, and artifacts from his global travels. During my visits, we'd sit in his sun-drenched conservatory, sipping Earl Grey tea and talking for hours. "Tell me about the new bronze you're working on," he would prompt, his eyes still sparkling with genuine curiosity. I would show him sketches and photos on my tablet, and he'd ask insightful questions about my process and inspiration. He shared stories of building his business, of the grit and the gambles. He spoke often of my grandmother, Beatrice, who had passed long before my time. "She was an artist, you know," he confided one afternoon. "A painter. Her watercolors could capture a feeling so perfectly it would take your breath away. Your father, he never quite understood that part of her. He was born with a ledger for a soul." In his final months, our conversations sometimes took a cryptic turn. About 6 months before he passed, he gripped my hand, his own feeling fragile as a bird's wing. "I've been watching, Mia. All these years. "I've been taking notes," he said, his voice a low whisper. "Don't you worry. I'm going to make things right." When I pressed him for an explanation, he simply smiled and steered the conversation elsewhere. The call came on a brisk Monday morning in October. I was in my Fishtown studio, wrestling with a new sculpture, when my father's voice, stripped of its usual authority, came through the line. "Your grandfather passed away in his sleep. The nurse found him an hour ago." The news, though expected, struck me with the force of a physical blow. I sank onto a nearby stool, the chisel falling from my hand. "The funeral is on Saturday," he continued, already in logistical mode. "You're expected here by Friday evening for the family dinner." I managed a choked affirmative and hung up, the silence of my studio suddenly deafening. I wept for the loss of the man himself, and for the loss of the only person in my world who had ever truly seen me. The next few days were a gray, disorienting blur. I charged a last-minute Amtrak ticket to my credit card and bought a simple black dress I couldn't afford. Arriving at my parents' house on Friday evening, the chasm between my life and theirs felt wider than ever. I dragged my scuffed suitcase up the heated marble walkway, painfully aware of the worn heels on my boots. Olivia and Charles were already there, both looking as if they'd stepped out of a magazine, clad in somber but exquisitely tailored designer clothes. Olivia gave me a brief, airlight hug, while my mother's eyes scanned my appearance with undisguised disapproval. "You could have made more of an effort, Amelia," she murmured. "This is an important family event." Dinner was a suffocating affair. My father and Charles discussed the market implications of grandfather's passing while my mother and Olivia reviewed the funeral arrangements. I was an outsider, a silent observer at my own family's table. Later, as I cleared dishes, I overheard my parents in the kitchen. "Julian Croft called again about the will," my father said in a hushed tone. "He's adamant about following Arthur's exact instructions to the letter." "We knew this was coming, Richard," my mother replied. "You just need to ensure everything proceeds as we discussed. There can be no surprises." They fell silent the moment they saw me, shifting the topic to the weather. Lying in my childhood bedroom, now a sterile and impersonal guest room, I wondered what they were planning. I assumed Olivia would inherit the bulk of the estate to secure the company's future. I expected a small token for myself, perhaps a piece of art from his collection. That would have been enough. The morning of the funeral was cold and windswept, the Chicago sky a sheet of slate. The service was a grand affair, a who's who of the city's business and political elite. I sat in the front pew, trapped between my parents, a silent dam holding back a flood of grief as speaker after speaker eulogized grandfather's business genius and philanthropic endeavors. No one mentioned his love for bebop jazz, his wicked sense of humor, or the way he supported a granddaughter who didn't fit the family mold. After the burial, the family solicitor, Julian Croft, approached us. He was a distinguished, silver-haired man who had been grandfather's confidant for 40 years. "The reading of the will is scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. at Arthur's residence," he announced. He left very specific instructions for the proceeding. That evening, Olivia cornered me in the upstairs hallway. Her perfectly sculpted features were arranged in an expression of counterfeit sympathy. "Mia, just so you're prepared," she began, her voice syrupy sweet, "I wouldn't get your hopes up for tomorrow. Grandfather and I had many long discussions about preserving the Davenport legacy. He was very clear about his intentions for the future of the company. I was too raw with grief to engage. I don't care about the money, Olivia. I just miss him." She patted my arm with a condescending touch. "Of course you do. But some of us have dedicated our lives to earning our inheritance, not just appearing when it's convenient." Her words were a deliberate sting, a gross mischaracterization of my frequent visits during his decline. But I was too weary to fight. The next morning, we gathered in Grandfather Arthur's library. It was a room that was the man himself, strong, warm, and filled with stories. Mahogany shelves stretched to the ceiling, crammed with everything from leather-bound first editions to worn paperbacks. His massive desk stood at one end, and in the place of honor on the wall behind it hung my sculpture. Mr. Croft sat at the desk, his papers arranged in neat stacks. My parents, Olivia, and Charles sat opposite him. I took a chair slightly apart, next to Marcus Thorne, grandfather's best friend of 60 years. Thank you all for attending, Croft began. Arthur was most particular about how this was to be handled. I will read the will precisely as written. He began with the usual legal formalities, then moved to the smaller bequests, donations to charities, generous gifts to his staff, and a substantial sum to Marcus for 60 years of unwavering friendship. Then came the first shockwave. To my granddaughter, Olivia Davenport Sterling, Croft read, I bequeath the sum of $15 million, to be used as she deems fit in continuing the Davenport business legacy, a legacy she has already proven herself more than capable of advancing. Olivia's face radiated a quiet triumph. My parents exchanged a look of deep satisfaction. My father reached over and squeezed her hand, his pride palpable. To my granddaughter, Amelia Davenport, Croft continued. I held my breath. I leave this letter, to be administered by her father, Richard Davenport, as executor. The silence in the room was absolute. A letter. That was it. I felt the air leave my lungs as my father stood, his face a grim mask of authority. As executor of this part of the will, he announced, his voice booming in the quiet room, I must inform Amelia that the letter contains no financial bequest. My father and I discussed this matter. He came to agree with Eleanor and me that Amelia must learn the value of self-sufficiency. This is his final lesson for you. It's what's best, darling, my mother added, her voice dripping with faux concern. You've been adrift for years. It's time to earn your own way, just as your grandfather did. Olivia has earned her success. You have not. The humiliation was a physical force, pressing down on me, stealing my breath. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I fought them back. Olivia's expression was a nauseating mix of pity and smug vindication. Before my father could continue, Mr. Croft held up a hand. Actually, there is a further addendum to the will that pertains solely to Miss Amelia Davenport, he said, his tone firm. Arthur left explicit, legally binding instructions that this portion was to be read to Amelia in private. My father's face darkened. That is absurd. As the primary executor. With all due respect, Mr. Davenport, Croft interjected, I am bound by your father's legal directive. He was exceptionally clear. This is for Amelia's ears only. At least, for now. He turned to me. Miss Davenport, if you would remain, we can conclude the reading. My mother was incensed. This is a family matter. We have a right to hear it. Croft was immovable. These were Arthur's wishes. I must ask everyone but Amelia to please exit the study. After a tense, bitter argument, my family, followed by Marcus, filed out, my father muttering threats about his own legal team. When the heavy oak door clicked shut, I finally exhaled. My apologies for the theatrics, Miss Davenport, Croft said, his formal demeanor softening. Your grandfather anticipated this exact reaction. It is why he structured things this way. I don't understand, I whispered, my voice trembling. Did my father really talk him into cutting me out? Quite the contrary, Croft replied with a faint smile. What I am about to share with you is the result of a meticulous, 5-year plan orchestrated by your grandfather. He took extraordinary measures to ensure its privacy until this very moment. He retrieved a thick, sealed envelope from his briefcase. He wanted you to read this first. With unsteady hands, I opened it. The letter was several pages long, written in grandfather's familiar, strong script. My dearest Mia, it began. If you are reading this, I have embarked on my next great adventure. Do not mourn for me, I have lived a life fuller than I ever deserved. My only regret is that I will not see the rest of the magnificent life you will build. For years, I have watched them. I have seen how your parents and sister have dismissed your talent, how they have tried to measure your immeasurable worth with their cold, sterile metrics. I saw from the beginning that you were cut from a different cloth, just like your grandmother Beatrice. She taught me that life's true richness is not found on a balance sheet, a lesson I fear your father never learned. I have also seen your fierce spirit, your determination to carve your own path in the face of their disapproval. Your resilience has made me prouder than any corporate merger ever could. What your family does not know is that for the last 2 decades, I have been secretly building one of the country's finest private collections of contemporary art. That collection, currently valued at approximately $40 million, is now entirely yours. Julian has the full inventory. Furthermore, 5 years ago I established a private holding company, Beatrice's Legacy. Through it, I purchased a 4-story historic building in the River North Gallery district. The ground floor is a state-of-the-art gallery space. The upper floors contain a luxury residence and a fully equipped artist's studio. All of it, Mia, is yours. A separate, untouchable trust has also been established to provide for your living expenses and the gallery's startup costs. Julian has the details. One last thing. For the past 3 years, I have been secretly acquiring your sculptures through intermediaries. They are the heart of my collection. You possess a profound talent, and now you will have the stage to share it with the world. Your family will be furious. Stand firm, my girl. This is your legacy. I have instructed Julian to defend my wishes with every legal tool at our disposal. Remember what I told you, true wealth is not money. It is passion, courage, and the audacity to live a life that is truly your own. I love you, my dear granddaughter. Go make your own kind of beautiful noise. All my love, Grandfather Arthur. Tears streamed down my face as I looked up at Mr. Croft. Is this real? He nodded. Perfectly real, and legally ironclad. The collection and the property were acquired through separate LLCs your father has no knowledge of or control over. Your grandfather recorded our meetings. His intentions are indisputable. Why didn't he tell me? He wanted to shield you, Croft explained. He knew that if your parents knew, they would have spent his final years pressuring both of you to change it. This was his only way to ensure his wishes were fulfilled. Croft opened a portfolio, showing me architectural drawings of the River North building and a detailed breakdown of the financials. The trust would provide $15,000 a month for living expenses, plus an initial $300,000 to launch the gallery. The building alone is valued at $12 million, Croft said. The art collection at 40. With the trust, your inheritance substantially exceeds your sister's. An hour ago, I had been publicly shamed, made to feel like a worthless charity case. Now this. There is one more item, Croft said, pulling a leather-bound journal from his briefcase. Your grandfather kept this for the last 3 years. It details his thoughts and his plan. He wanted you to have it. As I took the journal, Croft's expression grew serious. Prepare yourself, Miss Davenport. When your family finds out, the reaction will be explosive. A part of me, the part that had been wounded for years, wanted to storm out and brandish this victory in their faces. But a deeper part, the part nurtured by my grandfather's wisdom, knew this moment required grace. What do we do now? I asked, my voice steady. Your grandfather left that to you. We can inform them now, or you can take time to process. I took a deep breath. They're waiting just outside. Let's not prolong it. Croft gave a respectful nod. Very well. Shall I explain, or would you prefer to? I think it should come from you, I said. Officially. He moved to the door, then turned back. Your grandfather had immense faith in you, Miss Davenport. He told me you were the true heir to his creative spirit. And with that, he opened the door. They surged back into the room like a breaking wave, my father in the lead, his face mottled with rage. This charade has gone on long enough, Croft. As executor. Mr. Croft calmly returned to his position behind the desk. I remained seated, clutching the letter and journal to my chest. Now that we are all present, he began, I can conclude the reading of Arthur Davenport's will as it pertains to Miss Amelia Davenport. It's a letter, my mother scoffed. Richard already explained. Arthur agreed she needed a lesson in responsibility. Actually, Mrs. Davenport, Croft said, his voice cutting through the tension, there is significantly more to the bequest. He then proceeded, with methodical precision, to detail the full extent of my inheritance. I watched as my family's expressions morphed from condescending dismissal to slack-jawed shock, and finally, to pure, unadulterated fury. "This is an outrage," my father roared when Croft finished. "He would never have done this without my counsel. This is a clear case of elder manipulation." "On the contrary," Croft replied coolly. "These arrangements were made over the last 5 years, with the final details confirmed 6 months ago. I have hours of videotaped meetings where your father, in full command of his faculties, articulates his exact wishes." My mother, pale and trembling, finally found her voice, a shrill shriek of disbelief. "How dare you, Amelia? How dare you poison a sick, old man against his own family? The ones who actually worked to build this legacy." "I didn't know," I said, my own voice surprisingly strong. "I knew nothing about any of this until 10 minutes ago." "Liar." Olivia spat, her composure shattered. "You've been playing the martyr for years, weaving your sob stories about the struggling artist to manipulate him." From the doorway, Marcus Thorne spoke up, his voice a deep baritone of authority. "That's not true. Arthur discussed his plans for Mia with me many times. He was sharper than all of us until the very end. He made these choices because he believed in Mia's character and her talent." My father rounded on him. "You knew? And you said nothing?" "I am loyal to my friends, Richard," Marcus replied evenly. "I honored Arthur's request for discretion. A request you should be honoring now." "This will not stand," my father declared, his finger jabbing in my direction. "I will contest this. I will drain every cent you think you have in legal fees." My father would never have left the bulk of his estate to someone with zero business sense. The argument raged on, a torrent of accusations and threats. Through it all, I clutched my grandfather's journal and remembered his words, "Stand firm." For the first time, their anger felt distant, like a storm happening on the other side of a thick pane of glass. Finally, I stood up. "I didn't ask for this," I said, my voice clear and calm. "But Grandfather Arthur believed in me when none of you would. He saw value in a life that wasn't measured in quarterly reports." "He clearly wasn't thinking straight," my father shot back. "No, Dad," I replied. "He was thinking more clearly than anyone. You measure life by its dividends. Grandfather understood that there are other kinds of wealth." "Easy for you to say now that you've been handed a fortune," Olivia snapped. My mother rose to her full, intimidating height. "You have a choice to make, Amelia. Right now. If you accept this travesty, you are no longer a part of this family. You are out." I looked at her, at the woman who had never understood me, and felt a profound sense of clarity. "I'm not stealing anything. I'm honoring my grandfather's last wish. And if you can't be happy for me, then maybe I am better off without this family." "This isn't over," my father said, his voice a low, cold threat as he steered my mother and a weeping Olivia from the room. Charles gave me a quick, unreadable glance before following. Only Marcus remained. He looked at me with a sad, proud smile. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you today, Mia. He knew this would happen. And he knew you were strong enough to withstand the storm." As their angry voices faded, I sank back into the chair, exhausted but liberated. My life had just changed irrevocably, not just because of the inheritance, but because, for the first time, I had found my own voice and refused to let them silence it. 1 year later, I stood in the center of the Beatrice Gallery, the sound of clinking glasses and animated conversation washing over me. Our first anniversary celebration was in full swing. In 12 short months, we had become one of the most talked about contemporary art spaces in Chicago, lauded in a national art journal as a vital new voice in the Midwest. My life had transformed. Running a business was a steep learning curve, but with the guidance of Sophia Rossi, a respected gallerist and old friend of grandfather's whom Mr. Croft had introduced me to, I had found my footing. More than that, I had discovered a strength and business acumen within myself that would have shocked my family. My own artistic career had also blossomed. The financial freedom had allowed me to create without constraint, and a recent solo show of my sculptures had sold out completely. The legal challenge from my father had fizzled out, just as Mr. Croft predicted. The evidence of grandfather's intent was simply too overwhelming. 3 months ago, I received a stiff, formal letter from my father. He acknowledged the gallery's success, which had apparently been noted in his circles, and stated that he and my mother were amenable to a discussion of reconciliation. We had one tense, awkward lunch. It was not a magical reunion, but it was a beginning, one predicated on new, firm boundaries I had set. My relationship with Olivia had thawed more significantly. She had attended the gallery's opening night, her surprise at my success genuine. We had started meeting for coffee, slowly, carefully, building a new, more honest relationship. She had even bought a painting from one of our emerging artists for her office. As I circulated through the party, I paused by a new bronze plaque near the entrance, the Beatrice Gallery. Established 2025. In memory of Beatrice and Arthur Davenport. It was a surprise for my staff. My proudest achievement, however, was the establishment of the Davenport Arts Fellowship, funded by a portion of the estate, to provide scholarships to young, under-resourced artists. It was my way of paying grandfather's legacy forward. Later that evening, after the last guest had departed, I stood alone in the silent gallery. The inheritance had given me the resources, but my grandfather's true gift was his unwavering belief in me. It had given me the courage to trust my own voice and define my own success. I looked at a photograph on my office wall, Grandfather Arthur, years ago, standing proudly in front of his very first machine shop. "Thank you, Grandpa," I whispered. "Not just for the money. Thank you for seeing me." The journey was far from over, but for the first time I was facing the future not with fear, but with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a woman who had finally, truly, found her own way home. My story had a surprising and wonderful turn, but I know so many creative people fight these battles every day. Has anyone in your life been an Arthur for you, someone who saw your true worth when others couldn't? I'd love to read about it in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. Your support means the world. And remember, the greatest inheritance you can ever receive is the courage to be authentically yourself.